If you asked the average person what their favorite map from Halo was, you'd probably get a few different answers. Some might say the Pit from Halo 3, a competitive classic that taught many the importance of power weapons and why it's important to control them if you want to win. Some might enjoy the asymmetrical nature of High Ground or Zanzibar, both of which are great choices. Or Spleef Arena, that's a undisputed classic. Can't forget Spleef Arena, playing that till late with the boys every night on Halo 3 back in the old days. Or you might get the occasional Valhalla chant, though really, if you love Valhalla, you've got to give credit to another map too. Charging across the open terrain either on foot or in a vehicle, perching up with a sniper rifle on a ledge overlooking the enemy's base, dashing in with the Warthog to secure a quick flag capture, encircling the enemy spawn with a ghost and running them over because you're a little bitch who can't win a gunfight for shit, pretending not to watch your friend's screen as he rages incoherently after you've blown him up with rockets for the 4th time in a row, connecting together multiple Xbox consoles and TVs to host a LAN party with friends from across the street or from the other side of the country. All of these and many more are certainly an experience that you or someone else has had while playing. Hello there guys, gals, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Laperladen, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that Blood Gulch is Halo's most famous map, partly due to its first appearance in Combat Evolved, being remastered and reimagined numerous times throughout Halo's history, or serving as a direct inspiration for other maps in the series, and of course, how could I forget its use in Red vs. Blue, being so important to the story, it's almost a character of its own. But above all, I think it's so famous and so beloved because of the many gameplay opportunities that its wide open design provides to players. I personally have several fond memories of playing it on split screen at a friend's house, and it was also the map of choice for the Year 9 and 10 computer science classes during the final week of term at high school. Running multiple lobbies of Blood Gulch 8v8 System Link on Halo Custom Edition on the school PCs was just, it was indescribably fun, and I peaked there. I'm gonna be honest, I peaked there. It was all downhill from there, literally. Like, scores were settled there, insults were traded, and boys became men. But nowadays, grown men go back to it to become boys again. Blood Gulch is the gold standard for fun when it comes to Halo maps, and while there are plenty of valid criticisms that can be leveled at it, it's a map that doesn't pretend to be more complicated than it actually is. Blood Gulch feels like a bastion of an older era of map design in video games that's been lost over the years. A reminder to never lose sight of making something that's fun before considering anything else. It's emblematic of a larger issue with maps in current first-person shooter games, especially in Halo, where the variety of maps in how they're presented and how they're designed feels very bland and lacking in originality. Let me explain what I mean. A majority of Halo Infinite's maps have a familiar 3-lane map design that's obviously spilled over from Call of Duty. Aquarius is the best example, but you can also kind of see it in Bazaar, Behemoth, Catalyst, Livefire, and Streets. There's verticality on most of those maps that I mentioned, which thankfully makes them a little more interesting than your standard Call of Duty 3-lane map affair, but they're still held back by their boring aesthetic. Notice a trend for any of these? UNSC facility. UNSC facility, UNSC facility, UNSC facility. I mean, kind of UNSC facility, like UNSC facility, but the architect was a gamer who just really likes his RGB. With the exception of Catalyst and Behemoth, every 4v4 map in Infinite is based around, you guessed it, human architecture. Despite the Banished sitting over here with one of the most awesome looking and menacing art styles that the Halo series has ever produced, they've only got 2 maps dedicated to them. And one of them, frankly, it's not very good. You've got so many types of environments to work with as well in Halo, so many different art styles and aesthetics to pull from. Speaking of BTB maps these days, they all seem to follow a similar trend. Side lanes that are too tight for vehicles to pass through comfortably, so are mainly there for infantry gunfights, and the middle of the map is more open, allowing for more vehicle combat. That's basically fragmentation and Breaker in a nutshell, with Deadlock being the inverse of that rule. These maps all follow similar formulas to one another, and it's just, again, boring. It's boring. Yeah. Despite the issues with some of Bungie's early efforts at making multiplayer maps, especially in Combat Evolved, I will not forgive them for some of the spawns in that game. They are truly fucking atrocious. You can't say they were boring. Of the 3 big team battle maps that CE originally launched with on Xbox, you could argue that they were similar to one another in some respects, but their layouts had certain characteristics or gimmicks that made them distinctive. Sidewinder shares a lot in common with Blood Gulch, for example. Both are quite open maps with not a lot of cover. Both have teleporters at either base, allowing for players to get into the thick of the action quicker, and both have an emphasis on vehicle combat occurring at their center. But Sidewinder's layout is completely different to Blood Gulch's, looking like a horseshoe in shape compared to Blood Gulch's very uncomplicated box canyon. Either side can't see each other till they're around this massive wall in the middle of the map, or they peek through the center tunnel, and the ice scattered throughout makes moving with vehicles much riskier. And you just have to look at Infinity to know it's nothing like the other two. But it's not just big team battle maps that were unique from one another, and it's not just BTB maps that have slowly started to get worse and worse as time has gone on. Smaller 4v4 maps were also far more varied back in the day. Some of them didn't work well competitively, but that's okay, have them in the game anyway. The competitive Halo players have always been happy to work around the default settings of the game and adjust them to better fit their needs accordingly. Just look at any of the game types in Halo 3 or Halo 2 that have MLG settings on them. They're also happy to choose a handful of maps that suit a competitive playstyle while skipping out on the rest. And that is probably one of Infinite's biggest shortcomings. Every map in this game feels like it was designed with competitive balancing in mind and makes a majority of matches feel overly sweaty. In the process of making these maps competitive, they've been completely sterilized of fun and feel derivative of each other, a problem that's worsened by Infinite's skill-based matchmaking algorithm. 343 have also seemed to confuse symmetrical map design to also mean competitive. Weapon spawns are roughly all the same on these maps and mirrored for both teams. One precision weapon such as the BR or Commando near each team's spawn area, a power weapon and power-ups are also in the center of the map, maybe equidistant to each other slightly, with a few other inoffensive weapons like the Bulldog, Mangler, Heatwave or Pulse Carbine thrown about in carefully calculated intervals so as to not have one side have too many weapons compared to the other. Do you know which map I was talking about? Take a guess. It was literally all of them. Compare that to Lockout as an example, where the sniper rifle spawns on one side of the map, closer to one team rather than in the middle like it might be for an Infinite map. However, there's a lot of fusion coils nearby that someone can shoot to move the sniper rifle away or kill the enemy player while he's trying to pick it up. On that other team's side as well, there's the energy sword, and the shotgun hides away in the center as a counter to the sword. It's an asymmetrical map that still manages to be perfectly balanced like all things should be, and that makes the gameplay experience and combat situations varied and fun. For every symmetrical map that you could argue followed a more competitive layout, your Battle Creeks and Wizards, you also get a Chiron TL-34, Prisoner, or Boarding action.
No. Damn it. Well, it was worth it for the shot.
For every midship, Sanctuary, and Warlock, you had Turf, Ascension, and Gemini that either played around with verticality in interesting ways or weren't symmetrical. Yeah, actually, in hindsight, maybe Gemini wasn't a great pick because it is symmetrical, but it at least does the thing with the teleporters that take you to the top of the map, which is cool, you know, it's an interesting gimmick. And there are plenty of asymmetrical BTB maps in Halo 2 as well, so it does help to, as the Chief would say, mix things up a little. Because of this asymmetry, it means that matches usually have a bit more diversity to them, and the playstyles that people will employ are more diverse as well, as opposed to what everyone typically does in Infinite, stop me if you've heard this before, where they rush to the middle to grab the power weapon and everyone dies but like one person. Repeat every 30 seconds when the power weapon respawns, which is also advertised to players on their screen. I need to go on another tangent real quick because the element of map exploration is something that's also been lacking in Halo maps lately. Where's the incentive to play a map multiple times to learn where all the pieces of equipment or power weapons are when it's being shouted at you by your AI every 12 seconds?
Powerful stuff coming from who knows where. Power items on the way.
Power weapon
What happened to that mental clock that was counting down in your head for the various weapons on the map to respawn? Map knowledge and spawn timings were a massive part of Halo's skill ceiling, and it's just like gone now. Blood Gulch had weapons and power-ups hidden in specific spots, like the flamethrower and overshield in the cave, or the rockets right at the center of the map with the fuel rod cannon not too far away. Knowing how long it took for the sniper rifle to respawn at each base so you could beat your teammates to it, it felt rewarding to find where those weapons were and remember them for next time so it could give you an upper hand in future matches. Which leads me back to Blood Gulch, which was so iconic, not just because of red versus blue, but because it was just fun. It wasn't trying to be competitive with lots of cover that was perfectly calculated from months of testing and consulting with competitive players, because Halo has always been a competitive game apparently. It wasn't overly complicated with specific paths that only vehicles or players could go down. It was just a big sandbox that dropped people in it and allowed them to mess around and enjoy it however they pleased. And that's ultimately what Halo is and what Halo should be. Halo is a sandbox that gives you the tools and you choose how to use them. Blood Gulch is just a condensed version of that fun approach to game design, and I think serves as a reminder to 343 and other game developers. You don't have to try so hard, when you can just as easily make a big box canyon in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of vehicles and some weapons and see what players do with them and the openness that a large play space provides and what kind of situations that can create. It poses interesting questions from a gameplay perspective, and you can see how people deal with the freedoms of having such an open play space. Big open map, not a lot of cover. How do I approach this? It's taking the training wheels off and encouraging players to make their own path, formulate their own strategies for this map, rather than just walking mindlessly down the blocked out route like some senseless Call of Duty player who can't comprehend when a map has more than 3 lanes. Looking at the wiki page for Blood Gulch, there's a whole wall of text that lists off various strategies that you can utilize, ranging from the standard sit at the back of the map with the sniper to
play your warthog to the front door with the force of 1,000 angry tigers and steal the enemy's flag while killing anything that moves with a bolt or assault rifle.
how do players utilize the sandbox and explore their options in a creative way to complete their objective? Will they use vehicles? Will they try to sneak around the edges?
What you're seeing is advanced warfare.
Will they coordinate with their team or go at it alone? That is always going to feel more rewarding for the player and encourages them to think outside the box. Or the Gulch, rather, in this case. On paper, the idea of a great big canyon with barely any cover seems like a nightmare to balance. I'm sure that asymmetrical map designs and trying to figure out how to balance them too is probably a similarly difficult challenge. But otherwise, without those shake-ups to the formula, without having those maps that are a little risque, your game is going to get boring. You need maps that have variety, and you need some maps that aren't mathematically formulated to give players the most balanced of matches, force gunfights, feel linear and repetitive. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes you've just got to let those creative juices flow and try something different. Is Blood Gulch perfect? No. But it's damn entertaining. And currently, that's more than I can say for a lot of the maps that Halo has released in the last decade. As some of you have probably noticed, the channel recently passed 10,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you all enough for watching, commenting, sharing, liking, disliking, whatever it may be. Thank you for taking the time out of your day or night to enjoy the ramblings of an Aussie who loves Halo a little too much. I cannot tell you how over the moon I am about this. It's just... Don't worry, my promise to make a second part to why we love the music of Halo is still withstanding. I just want to make sure that it is absolutely worth the wait and that I put a lot of effort into it. I want to add something new to the discussion in terms of Halo's music and not just blather on for half an hour aimlessly. So, I'm going to take my time with this one, but I do want to do something special to commemorate 10,000 subscribers. So, in the comments section below and on my Twitter, where there'll be a pinned tweet or something that you can reply to, feel free to fire away with your questions. If you've always wondered how I got my ridiculous sounding name or how I go about editing my videos, maybe a more personal question, I'll be answering as many as I can in my next video and expanding upon the Leipoladen lore, which nobody asked for, but we're doing it anyway. You wouldn't ask a question. You're way scared.
That's it. I'm shutting you down.